All right, so let's get this conversation started with Steve Baas at the Metropolitan Milwaukee Association of Commerce.
Well, we know the governor has spent, what, $18 billion the last 6 years on transportation. He says that's more than his predecessor. Are we spending enough or not enough?
Well, we're not spending enough to keep up with the critical time we're at right now in the lifespan of our roads. We're at a generational challenge where the interstate highway and the mega system here in southeast Wisconsin was built in the 1950s, early 60s. It's reaching the end of its lifespan. So it's not as simple as, are we spending enough? This is a time when we have to redo the system, and so we're incurring some extraordinary costs for that redo.
So how do you believe that lawmakers should look at funding this aging infrastructure?
Well, I think we have aging infrastructure, but we also have an aging and growing obsolescence in the way we fund our transportation fund. When the transportation fund was created, it was based on the gas tax and the registration fee. Those things were pretty logical user fees in the context of the 1950s, 1960s. The people who were using the roads were using them. Technology has moved forward, vehicles have moved forward, and those sources of revenue are becoming more and more obsolete. A car that you would have bought just 10 years ago would have averaged about 25 miles a gallon. You'd have paid about $150 a year in gas tax. That same car today is getting about 40 miles a gallon, and you're paying about $90 in gas tax.
So is your point to raise the gas tax or find other ways to pay for roads?
My point is, as we modernize our roads, we also have to modernize the way we pay for our roads.
Toll booths?
We've got to look at everything. You have to look at making technology your friend, and some of the ways through toll booths and vehicle mile travel tracking that you can incorporate into cars right now, we can come up with a more logical system for wear and tear on the roads, but you can also come up with a system that's sustainable into the future. The way we travel just 10, 15 years from now is going to be dramatically different from what we do today. It's not going to be filling up your own car and commuting to work.
Okay, but a lot of what I do travel, I mean, I get on the highway, I come to work, I go home, I get on the highway to go home. Do I want to pay a toll for that? I mean, how am I going to sort of help the state in its costs of building highways and repairing roads? I already pay it through a gas tax.
Right, of course, nobody wants to pay. And that's
but everybody wants to ride.
But everybody wants to ride. But here's the dirty little secret. You're already paying. Federal studies have shown that annually in the Milwaukee area alone, costs are increased to motorists by over $2,000 a year because of the condition of the road. Increased congestion, increased fuel usage because of that congestion, repairs because of deteriorating roads and the wear and tear it takes on the car. It's not a matter of whether you're going to pay or not. It's what are you going to get for that pay? Are you going to get a rehabbed, revitalized transportation system that's critical to our economy, or are you just going to be repairing your shocks?
But I think another important point to bring up, Steve, is how the economy of our city and our county plays so much of an important role on transportation. If you can explain that. When we talk about what's happening in Kenosha, where we see other big businesses coming into Wisconsin, but they're coming at the border.
Yeah, and part of that is because Illinois is a little bit of rough shape right now economically, and so it's convenient to go across the border. But 1 in 5 jobs in Wisconsin is located within 2 miles of the southeast Wisconsin interstate corridor. You know, for the folks in Madison, this is a political problem and a budget problem. This is an economic problem, really, at its heart. You know, over $250 billion of commerce moves in and out of Wisconsin every year. Over 80% of that moves by roads. We're a manufacturing state. We make stuff, but if you make stuff, you have to be able to move stuff. And if you can't do that, you lose your competitive edge.
So when we look at the costs, how do we determine what is enough? When does a road need to be repaired? When does a road need to be expanded? How do we get into those decisions and have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and perhaps a 30-year plan?
Well, and we have those plans. The Southeast Wisconsin Planning Commission and other groups look at those things in the long term, and right now we're reaching a critical mass in the replacement cycle of roads where it's actually more cost effective to replace than to just scrape and lay another layer of surface.
But how do we reach the critical mass now versus why didn't we see it coming? I mean, if you have a 30-year roof and it needs to be repaired at 30 years, you know that's coming down the road. Did we know this was coming down the road?
We knew it was coming down the road, but the natural tendency of politicians and of individuals, as you said, you don't want to pay,
Right.
is to kick the can down the road. Unfortunately, that road has gotten bumpier and filled with more potholes as we've avoided the tough choices. We're reaching an inflection point, a tipping point where we can no longer avoid those tough decisions, and something has to be done.
But do you think it has to get to that point where, as you said, you mentioned the roof. Okay, if you get more leaks in the roof, then it becomes more of a priority.
And a repair.
Yeah, so you
versus a
repair it.
replace.
So do we have to get to that space and place where a bridge collapses, God forbid, that we then say, this is an important topic, we need to push the money forward to make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to wish for any catastrophe, and I'm hopeful that we won't see transportation infrastructure fall off the cliff, but you're going to see it in decisions businesses make, in decisions individuals make, in increasing frustration among the public, and it's something that it's going to cost the taxpayers more if we keep ignoring a modernization of our funding system and an adequacy of our funding system and do short-term patches rather than long-term solutions.
So pay now or pay later.
You're already paying now.
Yeah,
so pay now smart or pay later dumb.
All right.
Steve Baas, appreciate your insight.
My pleasure.
Well, we're talking about putting all those options on the table. So coming up, build or not to build, toll or not to toll. How does the state move the transportation ball forward?